Hi, I'm Kachri and I'm here with some new book recommendations for you all. Reading this year hasn't really been the way that I had imagined it to be. My initial goal was and still is 100 books, and I still haven't been able to read 50, like not even halfway. So, am I concerned? Yes. But are we going to talk about that today? No. What we are going to talk about are all the books that I read recently over the summer in the last 2 months and my 2 cents on all of them. Overall, I think I read about 14 books in total. In these 14 books, I have found some books that I absolutely hated and some books that I absolutely really enjoyed reading. So let's get into all of them without any delay. The first book that I read in June was this book called Swimming Lessons. I actually received an advance reader copy of this back in like I think March or April. I don't remember. But since I am such a big mood reader, I finally picked it up in June. Also because the author was visiting Delhi on like a book tour, so I really wanted to go and meet and get my book signed. So definitely I wanted to read the book and know what it was about before attending the author meet. And it basically is a story that explores grief and queerness in a very supernatural setting in modern Singapore. I don't really have a lot to say because I did enjoy this book quite a lot, and I feel like for a debut author, the writing was exceptionally well done, as well as the exploration of grief was quite sentimental and profoundly put there. However, the only issue I have with this book is the fact that there is this parallelly running storyline of two investigators of this supernatural oddities department that I just couldn't get into or understand. The entire book was amazing, and I would have loved if the entire book just focused on these two sisters and their stories. But I just could not grasp what the importance of this whole like Inspector Ishan and the other character was. Like when those POVs came up, I felt like I was thrown off the actual plot or the actual story that was going on. So that's one reason why I feel like this book did not leave that big an impact on me as it should have. I did enjoy the author's writing style as well as the way the author wrote this grief in a non-linear way. It's just that small parallel storyline going on thing that just made the reading experience a little off for me. The next book that I read is this book called Death and Other Occupational Hazards. And honestly, to be very frank, when I picked up this book, it was basically because of the title, because someone told me that it's a thriller, and I'm like, I'm crazy for thrillers, so just give it to me. So I had no idea what this book was going to give me, or what the whole story was, or what the plot was, or who the characters were. So when I actually started reading it, I was in for a complete surprise. This book is basically about these two characters, Death and Life, who are basically the personification of death and life. So we have a main character who is Death, who is basically the Grim Reaper, and she's just a girl who wants to go on a sabbatical because she's really done with her work and she's questioning her job. And so she goes on a sabbatical, like a holiday in the human world, while Death, who takes up the name Delara in the human world, while she's in the human world, she comes across these unplanned deaths, basically murders that are happening across city and across town. And it creates a huge problem for her because those deaths are not something that she was present with or something that she orchestrated, because that is her job. So someone is murdering people, someone is out there creating, taking part in unplanned deaths, and it is going to lead to huge problem to the entire synchronity of the life on earth. I know it sounds heavy and I know it sounds very silly and stupid, but trust me, this book was so much fun to read. It's like one of those fun, refreshing comedy thrillers that just gets you in the mood and makes you so happy and gives you a good mood throughout. This is not a book that you read with a very serious mind or a very serious outtake, because this is just for fun. This is just like for the vibe. Irrespective of that, I feel like this book is a great book to just break your mood, like a refreshing read from the heavy books that you might be reading, and just indulge in some fun cozy little thriller about death and life and this whole fight on earth. The surprising thing is that you will find so many other like characters, like God, like the creator of life and everyone just personified in this book, and it's just so funny. You're gonna have a great time irrespective of you being a thriller reader or not, or loving some other genre. This is just one of those books that are going to put you in a good mood. So I think I had a lot of expectations from Count My Lives because most of my friends and mutuals they just hyped this book up so much. And the idea of the book in retrospect also sounded quite interesting. Because imagine we have a main character where she keeps on lying. She's a pathological liar. She loves lying. It just comes out of her naturally, like she's born to do it. And then she comes across this perfect man who has a perfect wife and a perfect kid, and they have a perfect family. And our main character wants to be part of this family very, very badly. So, what does she do? She lies her way in. And see, when you hear a blurb or summary like this, you are intrigued to know what happens in the thriller because there's so many possibilities that could be, at the end of this plot. And for me, I thought the same. I thought, wow, a pathological liar, a character who's flawed from the beginning. Like the author is not even giving us a chance to even like the character one bit. And from the beginning, she's an unlikable character. What could go wrong? A lot of the things went wrong in both good and bad ways. I think one of the issues with this book was that it was not interesting enough for me. After you've read so many of the thrillers, at a point, the plot, the twist, everything becomes just predictable. It's like one thing that's been done again and again. And yes, it happened with this book too. However, it's not the predictability of the plot or the twist that count for me. It's more of how it has been executed to make that same predictability interesting or intriguing enough for the reader. And I feel like this book did not do that for me. It was fun. It had its moments, but right from 20% of the book, I think you can just see what is going to happen or what is coming. I had read another similar book, I think last year, in the beginning of last year. But I remember also reading a similar kind of book like 2, 3 years ago, which had the same idea and same plot of identity and lies and all those things. In that manner, this book did not really stand out to me as much as I was hoping it to. But I would say that if you are a beginner thriller reader, you want to get your hands into the thriller genre, and you are looking for something interesting and intriguing to keep you hooked, this book might just be the one for you. I'm quite confused about my feelings towards this book because, on one hand, I thought that this had very sloppy plot. I feel like Frida has run out of ideas at this point and she's just doing anything and everything because this book just made so little sense. I probably have read this plot 1,000 more times before. It's like a culmination of all her other works into one, like the twists and the climaxes and the secrets and all, they're just not new. They did not feel like anything extra or new, which was so on brand for her. Like all of her books literally has some of the other twists that is like completely out of the ordinary and throws you off the hook or something. But this was completely not that. And on the other hand, though, however, it still had that excitement of a Frida McFadden book. It was very fast, very quick, very entertaining, and even though it was predictable, I did have a fun time reading it. But I would say that if you are new to Frida McFadden's world and you haven't read a lot of her books, maybe this is something that you might enjoy. I did finish this book in like a couple of hours and I hated it. I honestly don't know what I was expecting. Like, you see the title, it's called The Cheating Husband. And the blurb literally has everything written down that you need to know about this book. And it's very straightforward. It has nothing exciting going on. There were no red herrings. There were no like extra plot lines that you could follow to keep you maybe away from finding out about the actual murderer or killer or anything else. It's just so straightforward that I have never read a thriller as boring and as predictable as this. The Cheating Husband, I would say just stay away from it because not only does it have a very, very, very predictable plot that you can probably figure out from reading the blurb, it's also so badly written. It's sloppy writing, it's sloppy plot. On top of that, it is like the author and the editors and everyone just did not even put any effort. They did not even try. Like, what's the book about? The Cheating Husband. There were no excitements, there were no other thrilling points of or suspense points that would make me want to put my guesses on the other people. It was just three people involved and some random fourth person, but it was the three people in the love triangle involved. And nothing else apart from that. It was just the same thing again and again. So, spoiler alert, this wife keeps on following the husband keeps on going to the mistress's house to do you know what. And it's the same thing for 50% of the book. and the other 50% is the wife thinking about how she wants to kill the husband because he's a cheater. She's just thinking about it in her mind. And then the husband is thinking about how he wants to get rid of the wife because he's not happy and that he is in love with this mistress. And the mistress's monologue about how she just wants to be happy and in love, and she thinks that the cheating husband, would be the one for her. And there's this whole heartbreak killer thing going on that just was random. Like they did not even try to put some effort into making the serial killer appear like a serial killer. I am just so frustrated because I heard people like this book and I do not know why you like this book. Like, I am genuinely surprised why this was even published. I do not want to be that person, but this book was just trash, to say it lightly. I wouldn't have mind if The Cheating Husband was somewhat like Frida McFadden's book, like silly and predictable but still fun to read. But this was silly and predictable and bad and not even fun to read. Okay, so I finally completed Delhi Disco last night. This book doesn't have a lot of things going on. Like, yes, there are a lot of things going on, but it just doesn't have a lot of substance to it. To me, what the ultimate problem was that it was too much of telling. And I don't know if it was like an artistic choice or the author wanted it to be that way, but there were just too many dialogues right from the beginning. Too much telling. It's just dialogues and people just telling things in dialogues, which is one thing that I really don't like and puts me off a lot. Imagine a very Bollywood masala filled comedy thriller, like, you know, that book Love You to Death by Anuja Chauhan. I feel like if you have read that book or if you've watched Murder Mubarak on Netflix and enjoyed it, you might like this book because it also follows on the same realm of the things, you know, a little bit of fun, a little bit of comedy, but a little bit of thriller and mystery, suspense, and all that thing. But I will warn you that I felt that the writing was very subpar. For a debut author, it's fine, but writing could have been better, especially in the way things were portrayed. I feel like at times it was just too childish and too amateurish that I don't know, it just didn't feel right. I also am not very sure about the last climax that the author put here. Like, yes, it was interesting. Yes, it was like a very out of the blue twist that the author decided to put because there were no signs, no nothing, no like Easter eggs or hints for it anywhere. Or maybe I missed it, I don't know. But it just did not feel like something that flowed well along with the other story. But then there's a thriller and stupid and crazy things to keep happening in thrillers. So for that, I guess I will give it a 3 star. The next book that I read was Don't Let the Forest Sin by C.G. Drews. So basically, in a nutshell, Don't Let the Forest Sin is a botanical horror thriller set in this boarding school that follows the lives of these two boys whose life become interestingly intertwined. We have one of our main characters who is an artist and the other one who is a poet and a writer basically, and they both basically are bestest of friends, they're roommates, and things go awry and all chaos when suddenly the sketches, the monsters that this guy is drawing comes alive in their school and starts killing people one by one. No one knows what is happening, no one knows how to get rid of these monsters, and the only thing that these boys can do is just fight them somehow or some way. I enjoyed this book a lot. I think that the writing was spectacular. Like, it's mature, it's wholly atmospheric, it's filled to the brim with emotions, and it was done so well. These two little boys and their emotions were portrayed so well to the papers that I just felt so sad. I just felt a lot of empathy for them, so much that I just wanted to grab and, like, you know, pull them in a hug or something. The book also has these little stories interspersed within it, and I was just so intrigued by the way that these whole fairy tale monsters and the whole fairy tales were written throughout the book and interspersed with the entire overall plot, and coupled with the extremely beautiful writing, extremely flowery writing and narration, and the ultimate twist and climax. I feel like this is just a top tier book. Yes, I feel like you might see that plot coming from a long, long way, but the way that the author really encapsulates the entire drama and the entire darkness of these monsters interlinked with the whole trauma and the character personality of these two characters was so beautifully done. If you are looking for a good, well done botanical horror thriller book, especially with, you know, atmospheric writing, atmospheric setting, and exploring asexuality and trauma in a way that is nuanced and empathetic, I feel like Don't Let the Forest In should be on your radar and should be on your reading lists. And the last book I read in the last month was this book called All We Lost Was Everything. And I swear to God, that book was so bad. So it is marketed as this romance thriller, okay? And when I hear thriller, my instinct is to just go and grab it and read it because I am that type of person. I am that type of girl. I was not expecting the romance thriller to be more of romance and less of thriller. They just wanted it to be something dramatic. So I feel like they've added thriller to the tag list. And I don't know why they did that because it's just not a thriller at all. It's just a drama romance. But anyhow, let me tell you a little about the plot. So basically, our main character's father dies in this house fire, and she is left with a mother who is on the run and nothing to her name. And because she's left with nothing, basically, she and her best friend sets up this GoFundMe to actually fund the funeral and all. And suddenly, someone basically gives her $2 million. Now, listen, if I was given $2 million by some person as like a, I don't know, petty gift or something, I wouldn't mind spending it. So if I'm left with no money, no house, no nothing, I would use that money to put myself up there somewhere to like ground myself. But our main character is like, no, I am greater than that. I'm not going to use this money. I don't know whose money this is. It must be a mistake and blah, blah, blah. And that is my first irritation with the book. So she decides not to use the money and she's living with her aunt in this very shabby place and she works at this diner or restaurant, I don't know. There's also this guy who works with her that she, doesn't like in the beginning, but then one time she's crying and he comes and consoles her and she's like, oh my god, I'm in love with this guy. And that happens in the first 3 or 5 chapters. So these two fall in love with them. She has misunderstandings. She gets these questions that arise about her father's death and her father's life, basically, and her life in a nutshell. And she goes on this rampant search and overthinking of who her father was, who she was, who her mother was. And basically, there's like this whole back and forth of miscommunication, and she ends up with something. And then we have the ending where I wanted to throw my phone around because I was reading an e-copy of it and because I don't have a Kindle, because if I had a 2 million, I would have bought myself a Kindle to read the book. Never mind, that's not the point. But the point is that this book was so poorly written. It was just so fast. Like, we do not have enough time spent with these two characters who are supposed to be the main characters who are going to fall in love. At the same time, there was no chemistry. Like, you need to give me chemistry to make me believe that if they have a miscommunication, I'm going to root for them. Like, every time these people had a miscommunication, I was in my head being like, guy, dude, just like go away because you're better than her. Like, you do not have to get involved. I'm pretty sure like you can have someone else. The chemistry was just not there at all. It was not believable at all. And what is romance if there is no chemistry, right? Leave the thriller alone. Give me chemistry to actually make me care for these characters. And I read the whole book, okay, because I thought that since it said that it's a thriller, there might be some thrilling aspect to it. There might be some mystery or whatever. And I kept going back to the blurb to see if I was actually reading the right book and where the thriller was, because half of this book was just them being in love and misunderstanding and miscommunicating, and then at the end we have this explosive reveal that comes out of nowhere, and it just felt very patchy. This is coming to the territory of a rant review, which I don't want to, but I did not like this book at all, and I am sad that the last book I ended the month was with this book, which I did not like. Then the first book I read in July was this book called The Pact, and it basically answers the question of how far would you go for friendship. In this book, we follow a group of friends who are enjoying their night out, looking forward to their bright futures after high school, but one little accident leads to the death of three strangers that shatters their futures in 1 second. But what this leads to is one of the friends, Megan, taking the blame for the entire accident and agreeing to go to prison on the condition that when she comes out, when she's out of prison, all her friends who were present in that night with her would agree to whatever conditions or whatever help that she needs. And everybody agrees because no one wants to go to prison and Megan is all willing. And we basically follow the story of what happens to Megan, what happens when she comes out, and suddenly all of her friends are dropping dead one by one. Is it her doing? Is it her revenge? Or is something more sinister or something more going on than what meets the eye? I had a great time reading this book. It was really intense. I remember finishing it, I think, within a night or so. and it really kept me at the edge of my seat. The author really did a lot with the character development and the character arc that makes you feel empathy, disgust, dislike for all these characters one by one. And I feel like that is always so missing from thrillers, something that will make you actually care for the characters. So one of the things I liked about this book was that if you are looking for a good thrilling mystery suspense that is going to keep you at the edge of your seat with characters that are going to boil your blood, I think you can definitely pick this book up. The next book that I read is Surprise Surprise, another thriller, and it's called Love Mom. I received this as a review copy from Penguin Random House. To say the least, you and I will be both surprised when I say that I actually ended up loving this book a lot. In Love Mom, we basically follow our main character Mackenzie, who was dealing with the aftermath of her mother's sudden death. But suddenly she receives these series of letters that arrives at her doorstep from someone anonymous, which recounts letters and pages from her mother's diary. And as she is reading these letters, going past to her mother's story from the beginning, before Mackenzie was born, she is surprised and shocked to find out secrets that she had never thought about where possible. Both Mackenzie and I were surprised by the reveal, and I kid you not, I had such a fun time reading this book. Some may say that yes, the reveal, the twist, the climax, they may be cheap tactics used for the shock and surprise value, but I would say that it works perfectly for the plot and context of this book. We follow a story which is very fast paced and will keep you engaged throughout, even though it may look thick enough for a thriller. I would say that it's extremely fast paced and you will be at the edge of your seat. We also have characters that will grow on you as you read them, and there are not a lot of characters, so there's a good thing about that. To say that this is not the best thriller ever written or the best book that you will come across, and you will probably read dialogues and some paragraphs that are going to cringe you out to the max. But you know what? This had me at the edge of my seat. I had lots of fun with this, so I would definitely recommend, especially to beginner thriller readers. The next book that I read was actually recommended by Crime Weather Book on Instagram. When I saw this book and I saw the context and the plot of this book, I was immediately intrigued. It's called Such Quiet Girls, and I kid you not, this book was terrifying. Not because it was horror or because it had some gruesome, gory details going on in the story, but because it was based on real life events, a real life kidnapping that happened in Chowchila district. So the book is basically based on this incident that happens where 10 kids and a bus driver are kidnapped in broad daylight and they are trapped and buried alive in a shipping tanker which is 20 feet underground. It's basically a claustrophobic, trapped room thriller that is going to make you feel so anxious. So if you are easily, disturbed by such things, I would suggest you not read it. But if you, like me, are interested about the whole incident, about what happens and what happened in the actual story, I think reading the book will provide you with just a little glimpse in actually what happened and what went down. I would also suggest that you check out the documentary which was based on the actual kidnapping. I would say that the book, writing wise, narration wise, was not the best thing. It was also not a very exact or correct recount of the actual incidents. Of course, the author, I think, took their own liberty to do with the story what they had to do. But it is definitely claustrophobic. It is definitely going to make you feel so anxious that you are going to be either reading the book to find out what happens or stopping midway because you will not be able to continue. And also because it deals with kids, it deals with extremely young kids and them having literally no idea what is happening, how to grapple with this situation. And this one adult in the book that doesn't know what to do, whether to comply with the kidnappers, whether to help the kids out, whether to help themselves out. And it's like a whole chaos and situation going on that I wish no one has to experience ever in their life. So this was definitely a terrifying book. I will not outrightly recommend it to people, but those who are interested in true crime, in documentaries, in real life incidents, inspiring books, I think for them this book is going to be a really really good read. The next book that I read is The Millhouse Murders, which is another classic Japanese locked room mystery by Yukito Ayatsuji. It's, I think, the second book in the series after the Decagon House Murders. And compared to the Decagon House Murders, I really enjoyed this so much more. This book is basically set in the mill house where incidents had happened in the past. A mysterious disappearance where the person's traces were unknown to anyone, the theft of a priceless painting, and a gruesome murder. And then we come to the present where we meet the famous detective Shimada Yamada Kiyoshi, who comes to the house again to investigate the happenings of that gruesome night in the past, especially trying to figure out what happened to one of his friends that went missing that night. And what follows is a cat and mouse chase of this detective trying to find out what exactly happened, trying to put the pieces together, and finding out the truth of that night. I'm not going to say a lot because I feel like you really have to read it to understand what exactly goes in this whole mystery. I enjoyed it so much. Also, one of the best parts about these books is that the author really tries to make you into one of the viewers, into one of the person who is trying to figure out what happened that night, or trying to figure out the victims and the killers and whatnot. And that really puts you in such a great and exciting mode because you also are trying to figure out who killed, what happened to the killer, what happened to the victim, what happened that led to the incidents in the book. As I said, I like this so much more than the Decagon House Murders. I think the story was well executed, the plot was well done, the climax was well placed, as well as quite well articulated. I feel like if you are into mystery thrillers, if you like classic Japanese mysteries, translated mysteries, and thrillers, this should be on your radar. And the last book that I read for the month of July was this book called One Yellow Eye. And oh my god, I kid you not. I don't know what I was expecting from this. I just knew it was about a zombie apocalypse and the aftermath of it and people trying to find a cure. But what I did not expect was to get an emotional book about the zombie apocalypse, about two people extremely in love and one person's determination to get her love back. So our main character Kesta is a scientist and she is keeping her husband alive, who was basically the last person to be bitten by the zombies and be infected by the zombie virus. So she's a scientist and she gets to work on the cure for it, and it leads to this entire process of her own dilemma, trying to find a cure, trying to get her husband better, trying to make her husband alive and whatnot. In the meanwhile, also grappling with her own fears, her own grief, and her own, anxieties about the future. I feel like this book is so much more than just a book about zombie apocalypse. What I really also liked about this book was the whole writing and the whole character delving into Kesta, as well as the science aspect of it, believe it or not. I feel like it was so interesting to read about these diseases that they were talking about, the whole process of how, you know, things were happening, how they were finding the cure, how they were, devising what was actually going on. I found that really interesting. And I feel like if you are like me, a reader who really likes thrillers and mysteries but are not into science fiction at all, or people who do not like zombie apocalypse, I feel like you are going to like this book because it is so much more emotional and so much more beautiful in a way and bittersweet. So I think I would recommend this book. Just go blind into it. So that's all. Those were all the books that I read in the last 2 months of summer, June and July. Let me know down in the comments if you have read any of these books. If you liked it, hated it, what you thought about it. Let me know if you have any of these books on your TBR, or if my video made you add some of these on your wish list or TBR. I would love to know about them. I hope you like this video. Please don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment and like. I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.